Welcome to the Corcoran Show, where liberty lives, history speaks, and patriots rise. From South Carolina, Eric brings you conversations with those defending liberty every day. Because at our core, what was written in the Declaration of Independence still matters today. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Welcome and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Corcoran Show. I am so excited about these series of interviews with each candidate for governor of South Carolina. You know, I think it's so important that we get to ask real questions and search for real answers. In the world we live in today, there's so many gotcha interviews and people trying to be celebrities as interviewers. To me, no, I just want to know on the record, where do these folks stand when it comes to life, liberty, history, the Second Amendment, and America First? I also want to know some key things about them personally. You know, these are all human beings. And before you go and vote in June, I think it's very important you get a chance to hear these people out. Now, I do not go out of my way in these interviews to attack them, to create some kind of viral moment. I get so tired of that. I'm sure you are as well. I just want you to have another resource to be able to make an informed decision when you go and vote in the June primary. And I think beyond that, it's important that you do your own research. Look at how they've voted, if they've been in the state house, the state senate, in the Congress, and look at their actions and see, does that line up with what you hear in these interviews? My job is to just help educate and get you folks to know who these people really are. It's an honor to get to do this, and I hope you enjoy these interviews. Patriots, I'm here in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I am so excited to do this series of getting an opportunity for you to hear directly from candidates for governor. And I want you to know, I want to ask heartfelt questions to get heartfelt answers. I'm not about scripted stuff. I'm not about gotcha things. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of watching those kind of interviews. I want to hear where people are really at and why they believe.
We have plenty of gotcha interviews, so yeah. It's good to have a normal one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the whole point of doing these. And first of all, Josh, thanks for doing this.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for coming up.
It's been a little while.
Been a little bit, yeah. Good to see you.
Now I'm down in Somerville. Up here, he's up here in Spartanburg.
Well, I still go to Somerville too. You know, you moved to the other side of the state for us, but you know we like it down there too.
Hey, well, we've got to fight the good fight and all.
You got to do both. You got to do all the counties. That's true.
Exactly.
I got to make the rounds myself. So yeah.
Yes. No. Well, Josh, thanks for doing this, because to me, it's, you know, wherever level of government, local, state, federal, we need to ask these kind of questions that you're about to hear.
Sure.
And I think it'd be great for citizens to know where people really stand. So,
well, let's go for it. Hit me.
So first question, in your own words, why are you a patriot?
I mean, look, I can remember somebody asked me one time when I first decided I wanted to get involved in public service or politics, however you want to call it. I think that was probably, honestly, about 5. I don't think I knew then that I didn't know what public service meant or what it meant to run. But I remember in kindergarten at Campbell Grambling Elementary School here in the northern part of Spartanburg County, we had a teacher, Linda Williams, who was really big on the patriotism front, right? So we did a lot of stuff talking about the founders and the Constitution and Declaration. We did a little signing ceremony kind of thing. I loved all that since I was old enough to really remember, and it's been inculcated in my mind the entire time I've been in public life since.
Yeah. Do you think in the world we live in today, because you've got globalism and you've got all this stuff where we don't really know who's behind what, and they got AI, and I'm not saying I'm Mr. Anti-AI, but sometimes I wonder.
I don't use AI because I don't know how to use it, but you know.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And so my own remarks, I shouldn't say that because somebody will say, oh, he's old. Look, my kids do, but I mean, I write my own speeches, write my own comments. I've never used AI.
That's what I mean. Yeah, we lose our voice if we.
Yeah, I've never used AI to write a speech. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think being a patriot is more of an active term that's been a long time? Because we are up against, you know, taking over the local.
Well, I think patriotism ultimately means that you defend your country's founding principles. I mean, the idea is, what is patriotism, right?
Right.
The United States is not allegiant to a king or to a monarchy or, you know, some kind of racial homogeny. But, you know, other countries that's true, right? So you look at the British, and I think the British are our friends now after we beat them 250 years ago. But their allegiance, what would hold that society together, probably be considered the monarchy or the belief in the system that it is. This country is a belief in ideas, and so if you're going to be a patriot for the United States, yeah, I love the ground, I love the trees, I love all that. But the idea that is the country is an idea. It's a set of values based in the Declaration and the Constitution. And frankly, if you don't understand those, it's hard to be a patriot. So a lot of people say, I'm a patriot. Okay, what does that mean? It means you got to understand what the country is all about, what it stands for, and how do you preserve that? That is my definition of patriotism.
Absolutely. No, I think it's so true to go back, bring everything back to the founders. We'd be a whole lot better off.
Well, I think originalism is a good thing. So yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, on being a patriot, to me, it means that you're pro-life, pro-liberty, pro-history, pro-Second Amendment, America First. So we're going to walk through a couple of those.
Yeah, we'll go through those
and
one at a time.
So being pro-life, what does that mean to you? How far can we go with it? What can we do to save every life we possibly can?
Yeah. Well, and look, that's been a tough debate the last few years. As you know, we've had a lot of those in Columbia.
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of those in the Senate. My personal view, and look, I'm not one of these people who says I personally am pro-life, but I'm politically not. I'm both.
Yeah, right.
I'm both. My personal view is that I believe that life is a conception. I mean, I believe that. I mean, I believe that's the biblical worldview on it. But you have to get to the point of you create a culture of life. And I think what people don't understand legislatively is the art of the possible at times. And so
to get to.
So sometimes, when I voted for the heartbeat bill, for example, saying that that's 6 weeks, which I supported that very much. I was a co-sponsor. People said, well, did you not want to just go to conception? It's like, sure, don't have the votes. Right. I mean, so the point is, do I believe in life at conception? Yeah, of course. And I believe the 14th Amendment, as our forefathers saw it, was a kind of affirmation of this biblical notion that is contained in Jeremiah, that he knew us before we were in our mother's womb. So I think that ultimately we need to defend the right to life and from conception on through. By the way, that also means that you're pro-life in terms of you're pro-individuals throughout past birth. Okay, we can't be pro-life until birth and not care about that.
Right. Life is an entirety.
But I believe that we need to ultimately create a culture in this country where we understand that having an abortion is not a birth control option. Right. I mean, I understand there's exceptions, and some people get frustrated about that. If a woman's going to die, I'm not going to let her die. If there's rape or incest, my personal belief is the child didn't do anything wrong, but mom doesn't need to be punished either. That's a really tough, thorny issue. But at the end of the day, we need to do everything we can to reduce the number of abortions that are, as I call them, people don't like the term sometimes, recreational abortions, that you just want to have, people. 80-90% of abortions in this state or this country are not related to rape, incest, life of the mother. It's actually less than 1%. Right. It's more like 99% are not. So what we've got to do is create a culture of life that says if you're going to play, so to speak, don't punish the kid if something goes the way you don't want it to.
Again, not their fault. Well, let me ask you a follow-up question on that. When you said there isn't the votes, what can we, the people, do to change that dynamic to where you would have the votes?
Well, and look, I think that's a moral question on both sides, right? I mean, so while I believe that we should never have abortion for birth control purposes, I've made that clear a moment ago, and I've said it in every public statement I've ever made. You also, I don't know that I want to get to the point where you say if the woman's going to die, we're going to force her to deliver anyway, right? So there's reasonable exceptions that pro-life folks can support.
Sure.
But you've got to win hearts and minds.
Oh, I believe that.
And
100%.
I think what happens, so the Christian message is two sides of the same coin, right? That God is a love and justice. And what we've seen is one of two extremes. You got people who say that God is so loving, he doesn't want it, nothing's really wrong. Okay, that's wrong. I mean, if you're a church that's going to go out there and promote abortion or talk about transitioning kids for sex changes, that's not biblical. That's ridiculous. You're leaning too much into the love as an excuse not to have any justice. On the flip side, we can get to the point where we say, all right, it's a bad thing to have an abortion, which we agree. Let's put mama in jail or the electric chair. Okay, that's the justice side too much, right? So you've got God is love and justice. Yes, there's standards, but you've got to show compassion too. And so you've got to win people's hearts and minds. And I think what's happened in the country since the Dobbs decision is that people on both sides have gone to the hardened corners.
Sure.
So, a lot of us who are pro-life thought, all right, this is great. It's going to be a great pro-life wave across the country. Okay, initially it was, and then some people said, all right, we're going to put these people in jail. We're going to put mom in the electric chair. And then people said, oh, no. So even places like Kansas that are pretty conservative said that they actually supported 20 weeks on abortion, which I think is important. So we got to win the message in a way to say, let's educate folks as to what this actually is, help people understand that the 99% of abortions that occur are not related to rape and incest of the life of the mother, have those reasonable exceptions where the compassion comes in, but don't take the exception to disprove the rule. And the rule is that life is important. And while there are exceptions we can accept, folks will use those examples to say, well, this is why you can't get rid of abortions in the country. And then some of our side actually plays to that sometimes by saying, we don't want any exceptions. All right, you're not going to win that argument. So it's defending life, talking about the precious nature of every child, and showing compassion and justice at the same time.
What have you found to be the most effective tool from the grassroots that you've seen since you've been in the state Senate to move legislation? Is it phone calls to their state senators? Is it showing up? Is it handwritten letters? Like, help people understand.
I think showing up in person matters the most. I'll go ahead and tell you all that. I mean, and not everybody has time. It's not like we don't read the emails. We read the emails, and go ahead and say that here. I read as many emails as I can, but I mean, I don't know how many every other senator gets. I'm on TV a lot, so I get a lot more probably. I get them from all over the state. I get 4,400 emails every couple weeks. My poor aide, God bless her. We read as many as we can. The letters are good. I mean, we read those as much as we can. But if you show up in person, we're going to say, all right, this person's very serious about that. So,
and they're constituents, so they're coming from the district.
If you show up in person, I don't even care if you don't show up from my district. If you show up in person saying, I really believe this, I'm more likely to say, all right, they took the time to drive to Columbia and make that personal appeal. What would you love,
last question on this issue, what would you love to see happen in your time in the Senate for how far we're going with being pro-life? Like, how far could you think?
Well, look, when I came to the Senate, we were at 20 weeks in South Carolina. I mean, we were a 20-week state. We're down to, essentially 5-6 weeks when the heartbeat's detectable. I think that's a huge win over the past 4 years. I have no problem at all voting for a version of Human Life Protection Act I did before to say that we would protect life in the womb from conception, with some exceptions for the things I've mentioned, like life of the mom. If mom's going to die,
right?
If one of her family members abused her or something, I think we have to have that conversation. You can't pass it probably without it. But I would say I do support a Human Life Protection Act, to where we'd say we recognize life at conception. I've always said that.
That's great. Well, listen, if you've heard nothing else on this subject, make sure you do show up in person.
Yeah, showing up in person is good.
Make the phone calls.
Showing up in person is a good thing. Do that. Yeah.
And how you show up matters too.
Well, if you show up with pitchforks and torches, you probably won't get in the building for starters. But right. I'm somewhat joking. But I've had some people who probably tried that. I mean, showing up in a way that we can at least, whether we completely agree on an issue or not, if it's heartfelt and respectful, I think you would find most of us in Columbia would reciprocate in kind.
Absolutely. That's great. All right, so moving on to liberty. And I know this is a very broad one, but what I'm going to put it down to is when the COVID lockdowns happened and we didn't know what in the world was going on. And I think every state was different. There was a lot happening, but freedom's being taken away from small business owners, right?
Oh, sure.
That had to close down, that we should still have and we don't.
Sure.
What would you do if, God forbid, something like that ever happens again? But if something like that did happen, how would you as governor stand up for these small business owners to keep doing their essential work?
Sure. Well, for starters, I would out Ron DeSantis on that. I mean, he didn't shut down Florida. One of the things that I've been frustrated here in the narrative that's been spun a little bit, all respect to the current governor and lieutenant governor, but there's been this narrative that's been spun since 2020 that we never shut South Carolina down. That's simply not true. I mean, I remember attending church. This is Good Friday, and we're having this conversation, Easter Sunday. I remember sitting in a church parking lot in my car, listening on radio at Easter in 2020, right? Because you had literally sheriff's departments enforcing people going into a church.
Unbelievable, yeah.
I never thought I'd see that in this country. I'm a native-born South Carolinian. I've grown up in the county I represent now. Never thought I'd see that. So to me, that was abhorrent. That was really, really wrong by any objective measure, that you would tell people in the name of, quote, safety, we're going to take away your freedom. In my view, look, I can have a safety argument. We even had a measles outbreak here. We talked about that. I will never take safety over freedom. I mean, you got to have both. Yeah. I mean, you promote public safety, great, fine. Give people medicine, give them advice. Say if you think it's probably advisable not to go to a crowd of 1,000 people, maybe, but don't say you can't go to church and you can't go to the store and you can't shut down businesses. And I think a lot of what you saw with lockdown governors, particularly in blue states, I mean, I saw a cartoon during COVID that I thought illustrated it extremely well. It was a picture of a person on the ground that was representative of a small business, and standing over that person was another individual punching him in the face. Yeah. And that was labeled lockdown governors, blue state governors. And behind them, holding the jacket of the blue state governor, punching the small business guy in the face, it says, Walmart, Costco, Home Depot, Amazon, because essentially what you had was a massive wealth transfer, that small businesses got killed and shut down, and you destroyed Main Street in favor of Wall Street making exorbitant profits. I think it became very political and very economically driven, whereas in the name, it started in the name of public safety or health, and then it became just a total bludgeoning tool for small businesses. So if I'm governor, I'd never shut the state down again, period, no matter what. I mean, if you take some measures to contain a bad situation, you try to provide resources to give people advice, give them medication, but I'm never going to say, all right, we're locking in your house. That's crazy.
No, I think you're so right when it comes to the medical freedom, which is a big thing. Like I told people, hey, if you want to wear a mask, wear it. If you feel that's right for you. I never liked those
masks. First off, I never thought it worked. My favorite was seeing people in the car by themselves wearing a mask. I'm like, gosh, I hope these people don't vote.
That's a hardliner.
When you're wearing a mask in a car by yourself, driving down the street, not sure I can help you.
There's something really wrong going on.
Something wrong there, yeah.
No, well, that's good to hear, because again, we don't know what the future holds, and I hate to bring in always back to the globalist thing, but again, we don't know what they're cooking up for the future. And
well, I read The Great Reset. Yeah, I read that. So,
right.
Yeah, good. Look, I think I'm not one of these people that wears a tinfoil hat. And I'm not saying you are either, but I'm not one of these people that's a big conspiracy theorist. I think, frankly, the government's not capable of pulling off most conspiracies.
You're giving too much credit.
Well, it's not competent enough. But I do think there are folks that like to use a crisis to push an agenda. That's true. I mean, Rahm Emanuel said that, right? When he worked for President Obama, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. There's people who will take advantage of that to push the boundaries of what maybe they could not have done prior.
Absolutely. Now, here's a big one for me, and you all remember this. I put my life on the line in front of monuments to just preserve history. I wasn't saying we're glorifying all of it. We just have to learn from it.
Sure.
But BLM scared a lot of people back in 2020, 2021. And unfortunately, we didn't have the leadership at the time to stop that and say, hey, let's have a conversation about, is this really about law enforcement or is this about pieces of granite? What would you do as governor to stop folks from doing what they did 6 years ago and tearing down history?
Yeah, the good thing about my being in the Senate is I'm not, some of these folks in the Congress have not had to take any votes on state issues. And if you're a constitutional officer, you haven't done it either. I'm in the Senate actively, so I have to vote on all this. So you can see how I did. Yeah. I co-sponsored a bill that was I call it the Souped Up Heritage Act, but basically the monuments bill that we are debating in the Senate literally right now. We're taking a week off for Easter and spring break, but when we get back, I'm pretty confident we'll pass that. I'll vote for it. I sponsored it and we'll vote for it, saying that we're not going to allow removals of monuments and tear down statues and change road signs and all that without approval of the legislature. So, I think that what happened with the Calhoun Monument coming down in Charleston was kind of a shot across the bow in my view. And you've seen efforts to rename Tillman Hall at Clemson, for example, or rename Wade Hampton Boulevard in Greenville-Spartanburg. It's all crazy. I don't agree with everything by a long shot that John C. Calhoun believed. Okay,
right, of course not. Yeah.
But he was still an American figure from the state. And you don't tear down the history.
Probably the most famous South Carolinian.
One of the most, one of the most. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of things he said I do agree with, but then he's obviously pretty virulently racist, and I don't agree with that. But you can say, all right, we're going to tear down this Calhoun statue. We didn't agree with something he did. Well, for crying out loud, you can tear down anybody's statue for anything. A lot of people do stuff you don't agree with. And so I do not want to see road signs and names and statues torn down and ripped away, because it's really difficult to preserve a lineage of history where you know where you are, good, bad, and ugly. If you do that, look, you're sitting here in Spartanburg County right now, about 2 miles from here. I have two immediate direct relatives who were in the Continental Army, who were a great, I think how many generations I got to go back, grandfather and uncle, they're brothers who fought in the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War. So my family's been in the States since 1746. I don't want their monuments torn down. I don't want their tombstones plowed over. They fought for the cause of freedom. So I don't support tearing down monuments and erasing history. I think that's Marxism.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever imagine that would happen in South Carolina, where you'd have monuments being pulled down? And
I'd imagine it in certain cities. I mean, I don't imagine it statewide. But Charleston's kind of, Cogswell's doing a better job. Cogswell's doing a better job than previous guys. But under, what was that guy, the Democrat? I can't think of his name.
I almost want to forget
it. It starts with a T. I know that. Tetersburg or something. I think Tetersburg is an airport. Those Tecklenburg. Yeah. Those guys are pretty radical on the left side of the social equation.
They pretended they weren't at first, and then
that's what their actions.
But,
I mean, I thought that was abhorrent. I didn't like that, so that's why I supported the bill. I think we'll pass right after Easter here.
Absolutely, that's great. No, well, I mean, like you all know, that's a big issue for me because
I don't want to tear stuff down. Don't tear down the monuments. Don't plow over the graves. Don't change road names and stuff. That's crazy.
Put the energy into building new monuments.
Yeah, right? Well, that's what we've done. I mean, look, it was kind of funny. I laughed a little bit because last week in the Senate, we had an actual fight over two road names. Okay, we don't normally fight over road names. I saw that, right. One was the Donald John Trump Freeway in Horry County, which I supported. And the Democrats said, all right, if you're going to do that, we're giving the Barack H. Obama Highway in Richland. So we gave him a little highway in Richland and a really big interstate for Donald J. Trump and Ori. My point is, okay, obviously I didn't vote for President Obama, and obviously these Democrats didn't vote for Donald J. Trump.
Right.
But you have two road names that'll hopefully stay there for a bit.
Yeah, well, I think there's more important fights to be had. But
there are more important fights, yeah, but that was a fight.
One of those symbolic.
It was a symbolic thing, yeah.
All right, Second Amendment. So the Second Amendment, obviously, I tell people you can't have a First Amendment without the Second Amendment.
Yeah,
how do you define that in your own thinking, and how would you defend that as governor?
Well, look, I was an original co-sponsor of the Constitutional Carry Act. I supported open carry. I don't support restrictions on people's ability to lawfully carry. And look, if you're some marauding bandit, right, yeah, that's a different story entirely. But the vast majority of people are good folks who want to protect their families, protect their freedoms. And, we're not going to take the camera upstairs and show you all the guns I have, but I think I have a 6.5 Creedmoor sitting out that I'm taking on Sunday to shoot after Easter lunch. So, I'm a huge believer that
you live out the Second Amendment, right?
I do.
Right.
I have family land not far from here that we go shoot at. So I'm a big believer that it's not about hunting. I always love when I hear Democrats particularly say, all right, we're going to defend your right to hunt. I don't care about that. I mean, I hunt occasionally, yeah. But it's not about that. It's about being able to fight back. Yeah. And this makes their butts pucker from here to New York when you say this. But the Second Amendment is not about deer hunting. It's about being able to fight back against a government that might get completely tyrannical. Look at what's happened in Venezuela, okay? I mean, that country could have overthrown Maduro without the help of the U.S. military if they had guns. They took away their guns. Look at Cuba. Look at the Soviet Union. Every society that's going to be despotic, one of the two things they go for first, take away your Bibles, take away your guns. It's much easier to control people that way. And the business of America is not controlling people.
No, that's the opposite.
I'd veto any bill that's going to restrict your Second Amendment rights. And I would push for continued protections and expansion.
Where do you rank South Carolina in terms of Second Amendment freedom, would you say, the country?
Well, prior to 2020, we'd probably in the middle of the pack. I think we moved up the ladder in the last few years because of, frankly, even my seat. I flipped a seat here in 2020. It was a Democratic seat. He filibustered everything that was Second Amendment. So when I won that seat, we won 2 other seats at the same time. We were able to advance it. I think we're in the top tier now. I wouldn't say we're number one, but we're top echelon now compared to most states in the country. And that's a huge improvement over 5 years ago. And we need to make sure we improve upon that.
Yeah. Well, that leads to the next one, which is being America first. And the reason this one means a lot to me is, we've given so much money to other countries, to other things happening around the world. That's great. But we've had a lot of small businesses closed. We've had a lot of problems in our own. So what does that mean to you, firstly, America first? Well, and then how would you live that out as governor? Yeah,
I think it has to be, when you talk, I remember that President Obama was asked, I think in 2011 or 12, do you think America is an exceptional country? He said, yeah, I believe in American exceptionalism, as I assume the British believe in British exceptionalism, or, he goes on, the French believe in French exceptionalism. You got to believe there's something unique about the country that other countries maybe don't have, right? And we have a lot of unique things about this country. This is the most exceptional country in the history of the planet. So for me, policies have to be pursued that are going to be defensive of how do you improve the lives, the education, the well-being, the strength of the American people first. Doesn't mean you don't have friends. It's good to have friends. And I really love the Israelis. I think the Israelis are a good ally in the world. I think the British are a good ally sometimes, depending on what week it is. Right. We got a lot of great countries around the world that we want to work with, and we need to preserve those alliances, but not at the expense of helping the country itself. And I think that you've seen enormous amounts of money shipped overseas to fight battles for other folks that, frankly, we got enough problems here. I'm not saying we don't help when we can, but we can't do it to the detriment of the American people and the sovereignty of this country, the value and dignity of citizenship, the security of our borders. All of those things are paramount and first and foremost. And if we can't do that, I don't want to hear him. It's like when the Democratic administration, the Biden administration says we're going to have open borders. Okay, we can't go. If I went to Mexico right now, if I went to Texas today and walked into Mexico, they would arrest me and I'd be in jail. If you go the other way around, they're like, oh, you got to give everybody amnesty. That's okay, crazy. Why is it bad for America to say we're not going to protect our rights to citizenship and borders, but it's okay for Mexico to? That's ludicrous to me.
Well, on the heels of that, I will say, too, this whole movement I'm working my heart out for, Make America Local Again, would really help with a lot of this, right? So what do you make of that concept?
There was a book written in 2000 called Bowling Alone. Most people don't even know that book exists anymore because it's 26 years ago, but there was a book called Bowling Alone written by a Harvard sociologist. And I don't think he was on the right side of the political equation, but it doesn't matter. The point he came up with is true. He said he took 2 data points and said in the 1960s particularly, fewer Americans went bowling in the 60s than they went bowling in 2000. Okay, but more Americans went bowling in leagues in the 60s than by the 2000s. So there's a correlation. He's saying in the 60s people went bowling together, had leagues, had church groups, all this stuff, and by the 2000s, a lot more people went bowling because the population grew, but they wouldn't go in groups and there were no civic organizations. And his argument based on those 2 data points was we are becoming isolated from one another. And I think social media has only exacerbated it. Yeah. I'm not anti-social media. Obviously, I use it and I'm talking to you on it. But
should be more of a reflection of what's happening.
Well, it needs to be a tool to enhance actual conversation, not just to be excuse to be antisocial. I think social media has become anti-social media often. And so most people don't know who their neighbors are. They don't go to a local church. They don't go to civic organizations. They don't know anybody they live with. And that isolation leads to, frankly, depression and health consequences. That's why we're the Prozac country. And then it's easier to attack folks you don't know, right? Yeah. This is like people will say stuff about anybody on Facebook or Twitter or whatever that they would never say to your face. I think the country's strength was always that we had strong senses of community, that we knew each other, we saw each other at church, we saw each other at the Friday night football game. I think having that effort to defend local is a good thing. I grew up in Inman, South Carolina. I represent Inman still as part of this county here, a small town. It's kind of like Newberry where we had the debate the other night. Newberry's a small town, Inman's a small town. I like that because you still know everybody. Yeah. I mean, if I go to a restaurant here, I'm going to know somebody in any restaurant I go to. And, I like that. I mean, people will complain, oh, they're up in your business. Okay, maybe, but the trade-off is you don't know anybody if you're not up in each other's business a little bit. Right. I think it's a community that knows one another, churches that are still cohesive, families that stick together as much as they possibly can. That's really strong for the country. It's an important part of the social fabric.
Yeah. So as governor, how would you facilitate that kind of Make America Local in South Carolina? Like, what?
Yeah, one of the things I've really tried to do, and I did it even here in Inman, is I pushed for them to use the Department of Archives and History so that I wanted economic growth, yes, but not to the point where it blows up the culture. I said this in the debate the other night.
That's what worries me, yeah.
Yeah, I said this in the debate the other night. So, I mean, we said, all right, businesses come on in, we want to open new coffee shops or restaurants or whatever, but don't tear down the 1898 edifice of the buildings right up. Keep that street going. In other words, have some preservation efforts to preserve that. I supported, worked with Senator Peeler and others to set aside, I think it was 35,000 acres we bought in Spartanburg County through a conservation land bank trust and set it aside for no development to preserve some green space. I've been a big believer. I supported with Senator Davis and Buford a bill called concurrency to say that, all right, yeah, we're going to let growth happen. Nobody's trying to destroy your private property rights, but let's don't build like 500 houses on a road that's designed for a tractor without making sure that the road is going to be able to keep up with it or the school can accommodate it. So in other words, don't let growth outpace the infrastructure in the local environment. I think if you do that, you have a better chance of preserving culture.
It's kind of like a hybrid between the big businesses and small businesses.
I don't want to like pave over everything I've ever known to put up a Costco. And look, I go to Costco, but I'm not anti-Costco, but I don't want to like pave over the peach fields outside Chapman High School where I grew up just to put a Costco. So there's got to be like a balancing act, and I think we're trying to find that. And as governor, I continue what I've done as senator, which is to find the balance between preserving private property rights in the free market and also preserving culture and heritage that you can't get back.
Our last kind of policy question. So when it comes to, you hear corruption here, corruption there.
I'm drinking my Dr. Pepper Zero here. Dr. Pepper Zero while we talk.
On the healthier side.
The healthy side.
What do you look at as real corruption in South Carolina? How can we root it out, in your opinion? Like, how do we get rid of it?
Look, any human society is going to have corruption in it. That's just, so what happens is, yeah, there is corruption, but I wouldn't say that one of the things that gets painted in the public narrative is that everybody in public office is just this corrupt, horrible human being. I don't find that's mostly at all true. I think there are some folks, yes, but as a general rule, that's not as prevalent as maybe at first it seems. It's structural things that cause problems. It's not that the person's saying, give me $10,000 I can put down my pants. I've never seen that in the entire time I've been in Columbia.
That's good to hear. Right?
But I would say that it's more structural. Like, let's take judicial reform, for example. There are a lot of good people who are judges in South Carolina. There are a lot of folks I don't like that are judges in South Carolina. But one of the little ecosystems that's popped up over the years is the legislature appoints judges before whom the lawyer legislators go and practice. and then they can charge a higher retainer oftentimes, and it kind of intimidate the judicial branch, if you will, for re-election if they don't get what they want. Okay, that's not the same thing as somebody taking $10,000 in cash and putting down their sock, but it is in effect still detrimental to a fair and just culture that people care about. And so I fought really hard for judicial reform in our state for a long time. I also think you got to end the revolving door between lobbyists and the legislature. We've done better on that. We've got a 2-year hiatus now. You got to be out of office 2 years before you can work for any kind of advocacy firm. Because it used to be, the minute you left your term, you could walk across the street and take up a lobbying job and go lobby your colleagues you just left. That's a problem. So we've done improvements there. I think the revolving door between the legislature and the lobby and then the judicial reform are where the bigger issues lie. And I've fought very hard to reform both of those since I've been in office.
Well, before we start recording, we're talking about how politics can be, ugly in so many ways. A blood sport, you name it.
That's fair.
So what made you throw your hat in the ring and say, I'm going to run for governor? That's,
Well, look, I've always felt that you had to have somebody that understood how the system actually works. If you want to reform it, you got to understand it.
Right.
A lot of people, there's 2 ways you can beat your chest one way or the other and say, all right, I'm just going to go join the system as it is. That's not good. Okay, we need reform. We need reform. But then you can also have folks that say, all right, let's just go burn the place down, and we don't understand anything about what we're trying to do. That's not good either, because you got to be smart about it. It's the biblical notion of being as innocent as doves and shrewd as serpents. You've got to know what you're doing to do it. I've tried to be a reformer from within. As I said in the debate the other night, I've passed major legislation as a senator that literally nobody on the debate stage has ever passed. Whether that's, I passed a constitutional referendum as a freshman member, saying that citizens only can vote in this state, changing the Constitution. 85% of South Carolinians voted for that on a ballot referendum. I've worked regulation bills, tax cut bills, restructuring bills, because I understand the system as it is and say, okay, here's what we got now. Let's get to here. And there's 2 ways not to do that. One is to just join and cave to it, which I don't do. Right. The other is just burn the place down. Then you're going to be ostracized and you have no voice. It's constructive reform from within. I call it being a conservative reformer with results.
How much of it is personality versus actually the policy? Because I've seen where sometimes people just don't work together because they just don't like each other versus actually...
It's tactics. It's not, I wouldn't even say personality as much as it's tactics. Let's take, for example, there are people in the House who might pull the pin, toss the grenade, and blow things up that I would agree with on policy. It's tactics. So when you say, we go back to our first question, talk about pro-life, okay? Yes, I would like to support, and I did vote for the Human Life Protection Act, which would have gone at conception back in 2022. I also knew in the Senate we didn't have the votes. And I needed to win votes to get to the heartbeat bill, right, which is 6 weeks. We were at 20 weeks then. So I said, all right, look, I would vote for the conception bill. A lot of people had heartburn about that, but they were not comfortable with 20 weeks. So I said, hey, can you work with me on 6? Okay, and say, sure. So I'm like, all right. So I said, I don't want to be at 20 weeks. If I can't go to conception, let's go to 6 weeks. That's still a whole lot better than 20. Right. And then there's people on Facebook say, oh, you're all sellouts and, people are dying. Like, yeah, people are dying. More people die at 20 weeks than 6. So the tactic of making what I call the perfect the enemy of the good oftentimes doesn't work well. So I've seen people who I think are well-intentioned, but they don't understand the system or how it works or how the vetoes work or the filibuster in the Senate. And they're like, well, I didn't get what I wanted, so I'm going to take my marbles and go home. My attitude's always been, all right, I want to get 80% of if I can get 80% of what I want, I'm not going to blow somebody up over the other 20. I'll go work on that later. Right. I think it's more tactics than anything else.
Do you think if people say, hey, I want senators who are exception all the way, that we just need to work on getting people vetted better when they're running for office and then really getting behind them and then trying to help people who are kind of in the middle to come over? How do you, from a tactics kind of standpoint?
Yeah, it's got to be a winsome message. You got to have candidates have good quality to answer questions too, by the way.
You do.
I remember, I can't remember what state it was, when I did talk radio back in the day before I was even in the Senate, there was some debate over pain capable in that state. And I can't, forgive the bluntness of this, but this is what this person said. I can't remember who it was. He said, what would you say to people who have had difficulties with rape or incest, life of the mother? Something. He said, do a better job keeping your legs together. I was like, oh my Lord. You're not going to win anybody saying garbage like that, right? He actually said that. It was a Republican candidate who said he was pro-life all the way. He lost to the Democrat because he said that. I'm like, all right, but it was in Missouri. I remember it was in the state of Missouri. It was a U.S. Senate race. Can't remember the guy's name. But I'm like, you just blew it saying dumb stuff.
And hurt the cause, hurt the movement.
Absolutely. Saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you got to vet them to know, do you really believe in a principle, an ethic of life, or any other issue? But then are you smart enough to know how to advance the ball? And look, one thing I have found is you'll get shot at from both sides. Like when I said I'd support heartbeat over a total ban 2 years ago, because we didn't have the votes, I was like, I have a choice. I can stay at 20 weeks, or I can get to 6, or I can protest and take my marbles and go home and go back to 20 weeks. I think all pro-lifers would say going from 20 weeks to 6 weeks was an improvement over being at 20 weeks. Yeah. And then you work on it as you go along. You're going to get shot at both sides. You just got to have the principles of your convictions, know what you believe, and fight to advance the cause. And
would your message be to people who are still upset, like, hey, well, this is why you need to be showing up and calling your senators and don't...
Well, and also it's not, you can't, one thing, it's not just showing up at the State House or whatever. It's also having community life. Go back to your keeping things local thing. Yeah. Politics is downstream of culture. So if you don't change the culture, you bring me 10 people to the State House, the other side might bring 50, right? You got to change hearts and minds. That means going to your local Rotary Club maybe. It means going to your church group. It means having people over for coffee. Maybe having a book club, whatever. Go jogging, play golf, be friendly, know people. If you don't win people over and build that sense of community, there's no way you're going to influence politics. That's
a great point. No, that's what I was thinking earlier, was with the culture is what moves the political realm. And
that politics is downstream of culture. What the culture does, politics is secondary to that.
Being, pro-adoption is just as important as being, anti-abortion.
Absolutely. It's actually a huge part of reducing the abortion rate. Because a lot of times people would choose abortion, do so because they don't think they can afford a child, raise a child, any number of things. Okay. We have one or two options. You can be the, sinners in the hands of an angry God kind of person and say, well, that's just their problem. Okay, that's not a good answer.
No.
Or you can say, look, we understand that you're young, maybe made a mistake, not prepared for pregnancy, but don't punish that child. We got loving families that would take that child and be happy to raise this little boy or girl.
People are waiting years.
They're waiting for years. We need adoption reform to make it easier, cheaper, faster to adopt a child. And then tell these folks that are worried and scared as pregnant, be like, you have an option that, you may not be able to afford to raise a child, but you don't have to kill that child. Here's the option where you can give this child to a loving family. Adoption is a huge part of the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
I think we've neglected that, but I think it's a huge part of it.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you're saying is you'd love to have the votes, but they're just not there right now. So our job as citizens is to know our senator. I mean, I can't tell you, when I worked for the Palmetto family, people didn't know the difference between their United States senator and their state senator.
I get asked all the time, how's Washington? I'm like, I'm sure it's fine. Right. I was there a month ago. You were there a month ago. I was like, I don't go there every week. Well, you're not voting for us? I said, sure I am, but in Columbia.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a problem. The people,
it's a problem.
scstatehouse.gov.
Yeah,
look that up and you can put your zip code in and you know who your representatives
are.
That's
right. Yeah.
Okay, now on a more fun level, I want to know with all the candidates who they are as people. So what do you do for fun? What does Josh Kimbrell do when he's not?
I don't have to. I work constantly. But okay, my favorite things probably, and then look, and this sounds totally cliche. I like to play golf. I'm sometimes good at it, sometimes bad at it. Depends on what day it is. Love golf, love going out on a boat, love shooting guns. I'm kind of a southern, I'm a very southern boy. So if I can go shoot a gun, shoot clays, play golf, I'll do those things. That's what I like to do.
And growing up, you obviously loved all those things.
Oh yeah, I did all that. Well, okay, I didn't play golf until college, believe it or not. My family weren't big golfers. So I became a big golfer in college. But guns, yes. ATVs, four-wheelers, all that, hunting, yes. So most of what I do now, I did as a kid, and the golf got added in college.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be in terms of beyond politics? We're just going to go just personally. Like, how do you, 20 years from now, looking at your life and going, I made an impact with this, or I did these things, or.
No, I want people to say I believed in the cause I fought for, that I believed in my country, I stood faithful to my faith in God, and that I tried my best. Everybody, we're in a culture where everybody's so nasty to everybody anyways, and we see it all the time in politics. I let that kind of roll off my back. I don't like it.
Right.
Nobody likes being beat up 24/7, 365. But if I can feel that I was faithful to my faith in Christ, that I was defensive of the country and state I love, and did that with integrity in spite of the shots and arrows that came at me, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah. Well, Charlie Kirk, I think in many ways lived that out. He was just speaking the truth, and
yeah, that's right.
His life was paid for that price. But when that happened, what was your gut feeling from that?
Well, I mean, look, I never ran like anything as big as Turning Point when I was in my 20s or whatever, but I did a talk radio program for about 10, 11 years from the time I was in college through really before I got elected. I did Fox News commentary on weekends a good bit, and I knew how hard that is to put yourself out there constantly to do it. And I was inspired by the work he did. I thought he was a brilliant guy, obviously, and certainly a good person.
Yeah.
And, when I saw that, it was pretty heart-wrenching because I thought, I remember when I was doing stuff on college campuses myself, I never really thought about it being a potential sacrifice of your life, right? Mm-hmm. But I think now, standing for truth, you can literally be in danger of life and limb. And I think we have to be prepared for that. We're not used to that in this country. And I know we don't have too much time together, but I'd say this little, you go back to the Soviet era in Poland and these Eastern Bloc countries, right? Where if the Politburo told you that 2 + 2 = 8, you better say it equals 8. That you literally could be in danger of life and limb for saying 2 + 2 = 4. We've gotten to that point somewhat in our country. I think that the president's doing a good job pushing back on it. But you got folks who really want to tell you stuff like there's 36 genders. There is no rational person who thinks there's 36 genders. Okay, nobody rational thinks that. I'm not going to get lectured on science by somebody who thinks there's 36 genders. And so, but to say that, particularly in certain places, whether if you're in California or maybe Denver or Seattle, you might be fired. You might even be charged with hate crimes. You might be in danger potentially of some radical lunatic of your life.
Yeah.
And I think we who believe in the truth now have to take a position of, obviously you're not inviting death. You don't want it, but you've got to be willing to fight for what you believe respectfully, confidently, and with love, but to the point that it may cost you literally everything.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect note to ask you the final question for this interview. And I want to do a lot more of these. And thank you for being the first to do this. What does it mean to you, the importance of people, no matter what their age, to speak out for their liberty and their faith?
Oh, look, silence is complicity. So, I mean, I think that we've got to do a better job on civics education more broadly, frankly, that we have a lot of people who, don't really know what the country even is. I had a person call me, I think it was my first year in the Senate, so about 5 years ago. And this lady was real mad, okay? And I don't remember her name, and I wouldn't give it if I did, because at first she drove me a little bit crazy, but then I realized, okay, she really didn't understand this. She had a dispute with her landlord, and they wanted her to move out, not renew the lease or whatever. She's like, I need you to go fire the judge and fire the sheriff and give me back this house. I'm like, ma'am, I can't do any of that. And she said, well, why? I said, it's unconstitutional. And I could, by the sound of her voice, she's probably in her 40s or something like that. She said, what does that mean? I said, the Constitution of the state and the country.
Oh, boy.
And she actually said, well, can you tell me what that is?
Oh, no.
She said, I heard about it in high school, but I don't remember. Okay, my point being, a lot of folks don't understand what it is to be a citizen or what your rights and responsibilities are, right? I mean, most people are just like COVID, go back to COVID. A lot of people just rolled over to the lockdowns and the heavy-handedness because said, well, we have to because the government said it. No, the government was breaking the law, not the individual.
Exactly. Right.
But you have to know that so you can push back. And I think speaking out's great, but know what you're speaking out about, right? I mean, a lot of people have opinions. It's the whole idea of sound and fury signifying nothing. I've tried to tell people it's great to speak out and do, and you have that right to do it. Try to understand what you're speaking about and be educated on the issue, and then be very bold.
Yeah. Well, Josh,
good to see you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. It was fun.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Corcoran Show, where liberty lives, history speaks, and patriots rise. Stay connected, stay informed, and keep the spirit of liberty alive across America. God bless, and we'll see you next time.